I'm in Seaham. And I'm looking for my ancestor who was one of the first coastguards in England.
And this is him, James Stephenson. His occupation was a coastguard. He's on the census with his wife Sarah and 5 of their children. James Stephenson was born in 1790 and died in 1877. And we've got his wife here who was called Sarah Mackey. One of her siblings was called Richard. His profile picture is a gravestone. We're going to talk about that in a little while. James and Sarah had a lot of children. Here they are. We are just going to be, in this video, looking at one. That is Jane Stephenson. And it's a story written just after her death that tells us more about our coastguard, James Stephenson, and his family. I'm on the British Newspaper Archive website here, and we have got a newspaper article from 1898, a story of 60 years ago. The death a few days ago at the age of 83 years of Mrs. Jane Hart recalls the circumstances of the wreck of the Brig Rainbow on Friday, January the 1st, 1838. She reached the Durham coast, and when off Hawthorn Hive, her battered and disabled condition was observed from the lonely Coastguard station. The Coastguard placed in charge of this station was James Stephenson, but on this day he was attending the funeral of one of his men. He left behind him his wife, Sarah, and his daughter Jane, aged 23 years. The 2 women were in their watch, joined by Richard Mackey, a brother of Mrs. Stephenson. Mrs. Stephenson had entreated her husband not to go to the funeral, as she had had a dream that a vessel came on shore with a woman's dead body washing about the deck. Mr. Stephenson, however, under the impression that the bad weather was abating, had proceeded on his journey. A few hours after he had gone, the Rainbow came into view. A good lookout had been kept by the little party, and seeing that the distressed vessel was heading for the shore, a red cloak belonging to Jane was hoisted on a pole and placed at a point where it was thought safest for the Rainbow to take the ground. Most remarkable to say, the form and rigging of the ship and the scene on deck, the dead woman included, were exactly as Mrs. Stephenson had seen in her dream. Mr. Mackey and the females were unable to do anything to save the crew, but Jane started on a most perilous journey of nearly 4 miles to Seaham Harbour, in the midst of a fierce and almost blinding snowstorm, to obtain assistance. On learning from the young woman what had occurred, a number of pilots mounted a coble on a wagon, and both were dragged along almost inaccessible roads to Hawthorn. The crew was saved, but the woman, who proved to be Mrs. Tanner, wife of the captain, had died from injury and exposure. And so there we have the story of the Rainbow, told 60 years later by the granddaughter of Sarah at the death of her own daughter Jane. I've searched on the British Newspaper Archive to see if there is anything from 1838 about this shipwreck of the Rainbow. The Rainbow of Sunderland became a total wreck near Seaham on the 25th. The crew were taken on shore, much exhausted. Mrs. Tanner, the captain's wife, was in the vessel and perished from wet and cold. The materials are expected to be saved. While I know the dates of James Stephenson as a coastguard, I don't know much about the stories of what he actually did, and it's little snapshots like this that the newspapers can really help with.
I'm on the beach at Seaham, and Hawthorn Hive is about 2.5 miles in that direction. It's only a little bit windy here, but imagine what it would have been like on a freezing winter's day with snow coming down. I'm trying to find my way to St John's Church in Seaham to see if I can find the grave of my ancestors. I know from findagrave that his brother-in-law and his wife are both buried there.
And if we look at the stone, we can see Richard Mackey's name at the bottom, and also his wife Sarah is at the bottom too.
But I can see from the stone that it's a bit illegible, and I think it might be a shared gravestone for all 4 of them. I'm here for the gravestones round the edge. And here they are. It's getting a bit dark, so I'm going to try and find the one I've seen on Find a Grave. And I've found it. It's this one here. down the bottom it says Richard Mackey and also his wife Sarah, but the top bit is pretty eroded. Now Sarah Stephenson died in 1873, so if she's here her name should be first on the grave. I'm looking to see if I can make it out, and maybe I can. If you have a look here, there are some letters, and I'm pretty sure that we've got an S, an A, an R, maybe an A there, and maybe an H here.
This bit might say in memory of or something like that. And then maybe we've got Sarah, wife of James Stephenson, the death date here. And then in this gap here, maybe James Stephenson's name and death date was written. But at the moment, we just don't know for certain.
What I do know is that James Stephenson, one of the earliest coastguards, and his wife Sarah, who had a premonition in 1838 before that wreck, lies somewhere under my feet in this parish graveyard, and I've really enjoyed finding out more about them.
You can continue the story with the next edited episode, or watch the full unedited and uncut version of this episode. Or what about watching this new family history story? Click here to subscribe to the channel to find out about all future episodes. Thanks for watching.